It's not why you're 40 years old. So.
Well, I mean, what game do you think you're going to be playing when you're 40? When do you think you're going to stop playing games? What's the age? What's the cutoff age?
When you're out of high school and college.
You're a high school kid?
Yeah, I'm in high school. Yeah.
How old are you?
Why does it matter?
Well, I mean, you foresee yourself in the future quitting something you love, like video games? Do you not love video games? You just cruising through it?
I mean, I think it's a little bit of a waste of time when you're that old. So.
Well, how do you know? You're not old yet. I mean, I can think of probably reasons that video games would be a waste of time for a high school kid, too. Do you have a 4.0? Are you in honor classes to get more than a 4.0?
No, but...
You know what I'm saying? There's more things you could be doing to improve your life than playing video games, too, right?
Yeah, you study and not play games.
Hey, just recreation, man. Having fun. Ain't nothing wrong with that.
All right, then.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Welcome to Honey Badger Arcade. This is another episode of The Week in Culture. And I'm here with John, excuse me, for the late start. But of course, all of the things I could possibly have gone wrong went wrong right before we started. I tripped on a cord and my Vivian became paralyzed from everywhere, basically. I don't even know what I was going to say from from the top to the bottom, but I am back, and yeah. Oh, what's going on? Yep. So what's up, John? How are you doing? Who's forgive my ignorance, but who's Leon? Oh. Oh, I see. I see. Oh, let me see. People are saying they can't hear you. No problem. Uh, okay, go ahead, John. Let me just check this, make sure this audio.
All right.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Is this a little bit
So
better?
what's Words
There
of
we go.
Paradise? What's that channel?
Word Words of Paradise. Leon is he's kind of very similar to what your channel is. It's broad culture, gaming, politics, just the zeitgeist in general. He's really a big free speech advocate, so we get into all sorts of fun stuff, say all sorts of crazy things at the earliest morning hours of the morning and into the daylight on Saturdays. And he's definitely a very important voice in this space right now as we are going through this culture war. He's still relatively he's on the rise, as it were, but he does stuff with Hypnotic and Angry Badger and Nerd Wars, of course. I'm sure, if you're
has he ever appeared on Nerd Wars or anything?
Actually, he's traveling this weekend. Otherwise, he probably would have popped in for a minute today. He said he still even might later, but I know he's going to be traveling. But yeah, he's usually on there. Recently he's been on there a couple times in the last month alone. So I think their weekend shows are starting to become a little bit more panel-y, and with the there's constantly guests popping in now. So you definitely see him on there, if not on his channel directly, but it is a good resource to check into. It's he's a kindred spirit in where we're kind of putting our focus in this culture war that we're dealing with.
Yeah, well, good. I mean, I'm always open to seeing content from new people, that are sort of like getting embedded in this stuff or becoming more interested in it. I'm just like, I guess I don't know the same people, and that's kind of cool because it means that I'm getting exposed to new people. Yeah, because like I've been doing this for a while, and I spoke with a lot of guys involved with this on the comic book front some years ago, because I was creating or helping to create an independent book some years back, and I mean, some people know him as your boy Zach. I had him on the show very early on before he started making videos, and spoke to him. I spoke to this guy named Captain Cummings. I don't think he does videos anymore. Aiden Paladin, who's become a friend of our channel. She hasn't been around a little bit because she's been doing other things, but that's just the nature of, when you're doing content online. But it's just like in different circles where there is overlap is always interesting because it helps you feel like you're not alone and you're not the only person that's seeing this, and we're all having different perspectives on it too. So like I might have a different reason why I think things are happening the way they are. I may have a different thing that directs me, like I'm guided by the star I'm guided by. It might be a little different, but it doesn't matter because we're all sort of like, we're seeing like a great I don't know, it's like a convergence, I guess.
It's kind of an awakening.
Of different elements. Yes,
Oh, yeah.
it
Well,
is.
like the way I see it, the way I see it is like we, as you say, we've got all these different viewpoints and perspectives, and I think we all just went through what COVID Hell World event was, seemed to be mostly about the divisiveness and kind of creating these barriers between us all. I honestly believe that was the whole reason for the 6 feet of separation. Had nothing to do with the seasonal flu. It was more our energetic kind of because like our concentrated bodies are the that is the manifestation of our being, but it's the concentration of our energy, and our energy goes beyond that. And so like that 6 foot of separation was in a way trying to prevent us from having energetic friction where we have little bits of ourselves casting off into each other, and we start to become a little bit more accepting and level-headed. And so like I think this kind of coming together of these different facets of the YouTube sphere, as we're in the culture war that we're dealing with, is to our benefit, because that is the thing that we talk about. Like last night I had a come to Jesus moment in a certain way where like Leon was talking about being part of MAGA, and I was sitting there thinking to myself, and I was like, oh, I guess I am, and which is weird, because like a lot of people like when you actually think, what is MAGA? And to me it is the Make America Great, and it's not just we're vaulting Trump as the high exalted being, but it's like the idea that this is a stepping stone to get back to where we can actually just be people who have varying viewpoints and don't have to see eye to eye all the time.
Yeah,
So
I mean, I'm with you on that. It's funny, and then this isn't a criticism against you, but because I see this a lot when people say, I don't want to put the orange man on a pedestal, but we've been kind of conditioned to have this knee jerk like, hey, I don't worship him like a god, guys. But that's obviously not true. Like we're all just like, yeah, I just like when I could afford to fill the tank of my car and like buy groceries, and I like that we had a border. These are not radical positions in any stretch. So like when somebody gets on the I guess you could say the America First train, it's like, yeah, there's nothing extreme about this. This is like what most Americans want and should want, and that's it. Like I don't feel the need to make the defense like, well, I'm not idolizing him. No. The people who do the idolizing of their own vices and their own versions of the state and their own institutions, they're the ones that want you to feel like you're the crazy one, but you're not. You're just a normal American that wants to have like a normal country with normal, sane people running it. That's it. Like, and there's nothing extreme about that, So yeah, I mean, you shouldn't be ashamed. And this is something that I've been trying to get people to see for years, actually. Like,
and that's the thing, is like there was no shame in it. It was like I said, it's this like realization where it's just like, oh yeah, no, I guess like when you think about it, like in terms of, because I've been kind of thinking about like the politicization and the labels we put on things, and Republicans and Democrats are just labels for a uniparty system. And so when you really kind of get down to what is the politicization in America right now, it's more you have either, these people who are MAGA, make America great again, or the woke culture. And like those cultural divides, even though they're not, given like partisan labels, that's really the body politic when you talk about what is at play currently. And, for my own kind of meandering into this forum, I certainly wasn't coming in saying, oh, I'm going to be this hardline or this or that. And that's the thing where, the left lost me along the way, because I used to live in hipster Shangri-La, worked in a naturopathic doctor office for nearly a decade. I make potions. I'm a wizard, but this transhumanism thing, like the transgender kind of identity politics stuff, was just like that to me. Like that was my bridge where it's like, no, like this is, this isn't about anything other than like some sanity. That and everything I went through by actually standing up for my principles and values and losing my job and everything because I wouldn't get vaccinated. That's to me, like, those are the more important things. And I have far more in line with people in the camp of, MAGA, as it were, than I do in the woke tribe these days, because they threw me right the fuck out with no hesitation as soon as I wouldn't get needled. So
that'll do it.
It's kind of one of those things where I would rather stand with people that don't have to have me be everything that they expect me to be. And I do think, unfortunately, because it is like anything, like there's polar extremes, and so there is an aspect of that, and I think that that's the thing that is now really the onus and the focus on what MAGA is like this distortion of like the people that are way too into the Trump end of it, but same thing with the woke culture. And then there's all of us.
I don't know. I don't think that the I don't think
I'm not saying it's a large part. I'm not saying it's a large part.
I know.
I'm just saying like, that's an element that's there. And that's what we were talking about last night, actually.
Yeah. So what I was going to say is that what I think is that we have to understand that we, like most people, they get attached to simple answers or even just like symbols of things that they, attach to their to what their desires are. So what I'll say is that people have wanted better for America before Trump came along, and before maybe it was Occupy Wall Street, maybe it was the Tea Party movement, right? This was but the goals were the same. The goals were the same. They wanted things like they wanted to end inflation, they wanted to stop printing money, they wanted to get back to the gold standard, they wanted to stop getting involved in foreign wars. They didn't want to get dragged into forever wars by any administration. They were aware that there was a deep state, or depending on, the language, the military industrial complex. They knew that these institutions had no interest in American citizens or American goals. But the thing that I think what happened is that when Trump came along, and he had been railing against, and he wanted to end the Fed. He was against the all of these things as well. And back when he used to talk about it and people liked him, he was basically, a Democrat in terms of his sensibilities, or at least, of the 90s, kind of like a right around Bill Clinton era type guy. But the thing is that the deep state doesn't share power, and wanted to essentially quelch anyone that's making any waves that could like upset them. So when it didn't work, like they did this thing during Occupy, where Occupy sort of ate itself because you had all the weirdos got on board, and suddenly it went from talking about corruption and banking to rape-free zones and having pride parades and stuff like that, right? But and that was just a natural consequence of the human element getting involved. But like this is the thing, like there are people who have, like, they know that they want to feel safe, they know that they want a sense of stability and security, but they don't all know how best to get there. And unfortunately, a lot of people are kind of the type that would essentially say, well, we just need the right kinds of people in power and everything will work out. And that is a rare, rare thing to find. And so what I think happened is the sentiment that is pushing everyone is the same, but Trump actually running for office in 2016 gave the deep state and the cathedral, this includes the media and everything, the very person they needed to essentially ensure that the people never get their way. So they just needed the appropriate scapegoat, and Trump was perfect. And the reason why he was perfect, by the way, is because of something much older than Trump or the Tea Party movement or anything. It is the Marxist demonization of people based in their identity groups. So Trump was the perfect, let's say, avatar to hate, right? Because he's like, oh, here is a straight, white, rich businessman, capitalist, lives in America, right? Big family, whatever. Ladies' man, you like it or not, it was true. And so he symbolized everything that they hated. And they said, this guy is the living embodiment of everything we hate. And they kind of made him into their own personal version of the Antichrist. This is what they did. I'm not exaggerating, okay? This is what they did in the media.
Right.
And so, like, even so, then people that were prone to falling for that messaging, they did. They said, oh, yeah, he's literally Hitler, whatever, right? And we got into all of the rhetoric because, and it's not because of anything he did, because no one could point to anything he's done. No one can point to any policy he passed or anything that he said. Do you remember? Yeah. Do I remember what?
Do you remember last week when I was talking about aspects of magic, and so like that's the thing with Trump is he's the woman in the red dress. He's the distraction element. The seduction is, that uniparty, the deep state operating in the background while everybody was focused on him. And then they set into motion all the stuff that's been playing out now over, this administration timeline and going, and still extending into the future. And so like that would be the thing that I would caution anybody is, say that Trump is successful in this run to the White House and doesn't get befallen with another kind of assassination attempt or any other crazy shit that's not off the table now these days. It will be much the same kind of repeat on that deep state end to try to do everything they can to make him a tool of the deep state, whether he's compliant with it or not. They can use him as that focal point, and then just, it's that distraction element. Keep the focus over here so we can do everything over there. And, by the time that people know the score, it's too late. And you end up with situations kind of like, I have had quite an interesting, I guess, experience with Trump ascent and over the course of the last decade through, like as you said, like there's all this stuff that does get pinned on him, and like I would say that at that level, especially now with the way that it operates, there's a certain level of corruption that's just present on any political party thing, and it's just there. And so that's the thing, is like when you look at, like you're saying, what Trump's administration was about, I was working well throughout that entire time frame. My life was, financially speaking, the best it had ever been, and it was so good that when push came to shove and I wouldn't push a needle in my arm, so they shoved me out the door, I'd been able to sustain myself for this Biden administration ostensibly almost all the way through, just off of what I was able to save collectively,
coasting
that time
off
frame
of what you had. Yeah.
And I was living in Seattle area at the time, so it wasn't cheap.
Yeah. But yeah, like this is the thing though too, is that like it's useful to them because again he represents something, and what that symbolizes is more than who he is, right? But it's just the way that we have all been sort of conditioned to see everything through these lenses of race and class and sex and so on. Yeah, and it's on purpose. So like that's why they always go to it. But But if someone can be rational and like just completely dispassionate in observing what the advantages were, just as they were, and not have to worry about looking like you're being partisan, because to simply acknowledge, hey, I'm glad that there were no new foreign wars. I'm glad that things were relatively cheap. I'm glad that everyone had a job. And by the way, when things are going well, all of those tactics of unholy division, and I can explain how dividing people along the lines of race and sex and stuff is literally unholy. When that's not going on, people get along better, and so people are less likely to be like, we really need more of the government to get involved in this thing, because what
Right.
the deep state or what any state wants to do is essentially perpetuate itself, and because that's how it maintains power and control. And so when you have someone that's literally like, well, I think I'd like less of that, please. And the kind of people who are going to be more likely to be that way, by the way, are people who themselves have an investment in the future, like they have children or they have grandchildren, and they want to make sure that the world they leave behind for those individuals is better than the way they found it. And so this is another reason why, by the way, the cathedral is generally anti-natalist. That's why they're pro-globalism. That's why they're pro-immigration, or just like letting everybody in. Because if you just let everybody in, then you don't have to worry about who makes babies. And a lot of the times, these people either they don't have kids of their own, or they're not that interested in their own kids. And so they're just like, they see the world, the life in the world today as the only life like that. And so they only act in the present all the time, because nothing else matters. So it's almost like, well, we know we're gonna destroy the dollar, the value of the dollar. So I'm just gonna grab onto whatever I can while I'm here now and screw everybody else. And anyone who's like, well, we should be thinking about tomorrow, I mean, they're the enemy. So I don't know how we got on this tangent, but I just wanted to say that there's nothing wrong with having the rational case for Trump. And that's not to say that he's going to change everything. No, again, another thing, nobody believes that he's going to be president for 4 years and then we're going to be in utopia. What it means is that we have to remain steadfast and adamant for the rest of our lives to make sure that these people don't get the wheels of power ever again. And we're just going to have to stay adamant. And maybe somebody, because, people are questioning, like, they'll be like, well, Trump's not quite base enough for my taste or whatever. He doesn't feel the right way about this or that issue. And it's like, yeah, you're not going to get that guy yet, but we're going to, because I think that as long as we have,
please everyone.
Yeah, no, as long as we have the ability to continue to exchange ideas, as long as we have the ability to pass on our knowledge, as long as the internet remains relatively free and open, and I know that that's in constant danger, because of course it is, then, there will always be like the next milestone. So, if you don't think Trump is perfect, I get it. Don't worry. Nobody thinks that. But maybe, like, if we get him in there and we make our lives a little bit more bearable for 4 years, then the next person might make it more bearable. And then you will get what I think is a snowball effect. Like, I didn't have this picked out as a story, but there was a guy who wrote this really great post on, what's the really popular blogging post right now? The blogging website. It's on the tip of my tongue. Substack. And he wrote something called the Vibe Shift.
God, I couldn't say.
And have you heard about this?
Substack, yep.
Have you heard of the Vibe Shift? So the Vibe Shift was written.
I can't say that I have, but I mean not in those terms, anyways. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, it's okay. So the Vibe Shift was written by this one guy. I don't have his name in front of me. I just thought of it now while we're talking to you. And he's like this Zoomer man. And he writes about how the men of his generation are really taking stock of everything that is happening and everything that's happened historically, and how they are moving forward with a lot of optimism and a lot of masculine drive to collectivize and build as men. And I was so emboldened by this. I thought it was so great because, and you know, I got back from Chicago recently, and I talked to my younger brother. So I have two brothers, and my youngest brother is 10 years younger than me, so he's 40. And he is very based, and I was surprised. Like, I thought that I was the only person in my family that paid attention because, like, my mother and my father, they're boomers. They watch whatever the TV tells them, they believe it, and so I can't talk to them about politics at all. I just can't do it. It's like they'll disown me if they knew what I believed, right? So I just don't bother. I'm just like, let's just eat some Puerto Rican rice and shut up, you know. But my little brother and his wife, I visited them, or they visited me when I came to Chicago, and we spent like an evening with my wife and his wife and us just talking about stuff going on. And I'm just like, dude, thank God my brother is based. Like, I'm so glad. So, but what I think it is that he is a millennial that's you know, really tuned in to everything that's going on, and one of the reasons why he's so encouraged has to do with this vibe shift thing that I was talking about, which I told him about, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I read that," and also the fact that he also has kids, and he's like, "Look, like Chicago is a crime-ridden dumpster fire of a city, and I moved out because no one here." The inn that lives here has any idea how bad things will get because they think that they can just continue to coast on these government programs, and that the prices will get better. And as long as the mean tweets are gone, then I could just live with whatever the suffering is. And it's extremely solipsistic and selfish. And he's had enough of it. And I'm like, yeah, dude, 100%. So like, I guess what I'm saying is that
as a point of reflection,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, as a point of reflection, though, you know, looking at it, just as you were kind of saying pragmatically, you know, a few mean tweets in my day to just kind of like, you know, make me think about shit whether I wanted to or not is actually not the worst thing. You know, it's far worse to have an insidious system that tries to, like, you know, lull you into a sense of safety and security and feeling as though nothing could ever befall you, and then the penny drops, you know. So that's kind of like where I'm at with it too, where it's just like, you know, like Trump is an interesting character, and in many ways he actually embodies America in ways that are unique and strange, and has quite literally, like, he is the figurehead of this place. And I mean that, like, not as a slight against him or anything like that. I mean, however you feel about America, that's what I'm saying is, you know, Trump is very much like a emblem of American excess in, like, you know, all of its positive and kind of negative aspects, you could say. And that's where people put the focus. They're like, oh, well, it's obvious that it's all this that's the problem with him. And it's like, well, even if those are problems with Trump, what is going on in your own situation? Because, like, that's my thing, is like, I've come to this point of acceptance because I believe in the multifaceted state of reality. And so after the assassination attempt, I'm just kind of now at the point where it's like, wherever we're going, we cannot get there without Trump's, you know, being part of the ultimate, you know, equation that's playing out, and it's being revealed to us in real time. And, you know, like, to me, that's just kind of where I'm taking a walk of faith, as it were, in this aspect, where it's just like, I don't have to agree with the guy 100%. I don't even have to agree with him 50% at this point in time. Other than, you know, to see just the aspect of, I believe in freedom and liberties. And as somebody who has been kind of hounded by the state in a smaller degree than Trump's had to deal with, I can also understand his frustrations with that kind of stuff. And so when you talk about kind of like, and that's kind of like the thing, is I'm sure there's people right now who, if they heard me talking today, would just be completely gobsmacked. I'm like, well, who was that guy that I knew, like, all the way back in Seattle? I was like, well, that was a guy who, as you were saying, was kind of like, I was, you know, I wanted to believe that we wouldn't have all this stuff play out. I wanted to think the things that I used to dream about and have like these weird deja vus were just, just a work of fiction of my own mind. But here we are in this weird clown-shaped COVID hell world, and I just have to kind of appreciate what is at my feet and the steps I have to take to kind of get to where I want to go. And if having Trump in office makes that more viable for me, then the continuation of the Clinton Obama dynasty under a different set of faces. I've seen what's under that mask for like the last 30 years, and I'm tired of it. So tired of it that I have no problem with people that just kind of want to break some shit up and kind of like bring those limits back into play in terms of the balance of power to where it's more on the individual basis, and that is far more attainable in a kind of MAGA mind state than this woke one, and that's how I think we got here.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, the mindset is everything. Like, to bring it back to what we're going to be talking about today, the culture and stuff. See, what's playing out in my view with everything happening, it's a narrative. Now, I'm not saying it's a lie, but I'm saying we're living through a story right now, and the way things are happening is no accident. So when you think about what are the odds of an assassination attempt that comes this close but doesn't kill him, and then what he does is he turns it around. He turns it around, right? From what would have been a moment of absolute despair to a moment of triumphalism, and people are responding to that. It's having a massive impact, and that means that we are watching something play out. And the reason why I'm saying this is because there's like a temptation for people to either go all the way, he can't be stopped. We're gonna change everything 180 degrees, etc. Or the black pill, everything is fake. It's all a setup. Nothing is real. And I think you have to dispense with both of those attitudes. It's definitely not to be black pilled is probably the worst thing you could be, in my opinion. It's literally what they want, and it requires the least amount of effort on the part of the people we're up against. But that doesn't mean that you should not be optimistic with wisdom in tow, which is to not get caught up in the whole this is it, we've done it, Hulk Hogan, tear off the shirt, it's over, right? No, I mean, all of that's great. We should embrace what we like, and we should celebrate that, and we should, be ready though, because this year it's only August 3rd, so we still have a couple more months. I'm telling you, shit is gonna get weirder than this. It's gonna get weirder and weirder, and your vigilance is gonna be tested. And it will be in every aspect of our life. So this story that's playing out, it's not just the presidency. It's not just the presidency of the United States. It's not just what's happening overseas in these foreign conflicts. It's not just what's happening in South America with assassinations and stolen elections. It's not just what's going on with the Olympics. It's everything is coming together. Every little thing we do, every little thing we participate in, even if it's just let's watch a movie together, but it goes from that scale into what happens at the top. All of it is it's all we're all part of this bigger story. And I think that we have to be grateful that we get to experience this, because this is history unfolding, but we should also remain vigilant, is what I'm saying. You have to, this is the time for balls, guys. This is the time for balls. So none of this, everything sucks, it's all pointless. Stop it. Okay. That's feminine shit. If you want to get in your SUV, go to the Starbucks and cry into your phone, go ahead, post it on TikTok. But that's not what this is for. This is us looking at the world and being able to, you have to pull the threads of what is good and pure and holy out of that which has been given to us, which is unholy. And to explain what I mean by that, because I think when I say holy and unholy, people see that as religious language. And like, you know, like I said, I don't shy away from becoming Christian, but I'm not here to engage in apologetics. I'm not going to read scripture at you, anything like that. But holy means to make whole. It is basically based in this idea of unity. This is and when something is holy, it is correctly organized, and it is sort of like something that exists above us, right? So it is above us, but it is the way that we should orient ourselves, and it is about unity. And what these people engage in when they disguise it by calling it diversity, equity, inclusion, but it's unholy. It's about division. It's about pointing out our differences. It's about focusing on those differences. It is designed to divide us. It is why is the pride flag a rainbow? Well, what is a rainbow? A rainbow is what happens when you take white light and put it through a prism, i.e., you divide it. So they're all about that. Yeah, it is. It is. And that's what it's about. So like we have to don't let them black pill you into thinking they have won, because if they had won, their propaganda would no longer be necessary. And so they're obviously like they are obviously on the run. They just happen to hold positions of power, but I'm telling you, they are not the majority. They don't have that power, and all we have to do is expose them. And there you go. Then we can restart the Crusades, brother.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah, the way I was the way I was saying it last night was the way I said it last night was that there's this tendency, and this is kind of like you were just saying, don't miscue the word I'm using for what you normally associate it with, but religion tends to be more judgmental, where faith is more forgiving. And now is a time to have faith rather than whatever your religion is, whether that be your politics, your scientific beliefs, your whatever. Like that's the stuff that's the division. Judgment is not what we're supposed to do. Like judgment and forgiveness, that's like a system that's beyond us, but we have a very hard time not getting caught up in the dirt. So, but yeah, like now is definitely the time for forgiveness and healing and actually trying to create things and build rather than just take all this loss that they've tried to drop on our heads and feel depressed by it and just give ourselves over to a system that is sitting here saying, just give yourself over to us and everything will be okay. Why are they telling you that? If it was so good, like they wouldn't have to. They wouldn't have to do everything that they do, like you're saying. And that's kind of like the height of the insanity that we're at now. Is like they're at these extreme progressions of just where their ideology is at, because they are becoming such a small concentrated group that they can only rely on their bot agencies of power and mass market networking and media and all this kind of stuff that works as a superficial overlay that acts as though this is what is as you were saying, it's the narrative versus the actual story. So the story in America is people just want to be able to pay for their groceries and have a little bit of free money to like maybe save and invest for other things, not I have to skimp on my groceries and decide which bill I'm going to push till next month.
Yeah, it is kind of baking into like, how do I become more of a self-sustained individual too? So like, if you can put more money away, then you can like build more at home. But that's another thing the state doesn't want, because if you don't need them anymore, this is like you have said yourself about like, how people should like grow a garden or something. And I'm all about that. But the thing is, the state has screwed me over a while ago, and I'm not like, I'm working on trying to change that situation, but it does require me and my wife to be able to hold on to more of our own money so that we can buy, like we're talking about getting a little property in Indiana so I can be closer to home, or maybe we get like a mobile home or something and we just go wherever. But we want to have chickens and we want to have, but like if people had those things, and again, that'd be another reason why they don't need the state. And this is the reason why they put us in this situation where we're in a perpetual state of living hand to mouth every day, and you're not able to like get closer to something because your money becomes worth less over time, or property taxes are really high, or it's hard to find. I mean, look what's happening in Canada with homes. So like this is a multifaceted attack on our ability to be independent individuals. I'm sorry for cutting you off.
And when you talk about what is Make America Great Again, it really is that we need to be free and independent. We need to have our liberties intact. We need to be the sovereigns of this nation, where like we don't sit here and wait to have our rights handed out to a daddy government. That's not even what America is about. There's we have inalienable human rights, and like that government aspect was just supposed to be the bodyguard so that we could stay inside and still party and just do our thing and be free, independent individuals. But we've been working with the rogue state element through both ends of the political spectrum for decades now, conspiring to, as you were talking about, the debasement of the monetary system. I mean, that's ultimately what inflation is just it's a covert stealth tax that increments daily on your life, and so what does it mean if you make $20 an hour, if that $20 an hour today doesn't even buy what $10 an hour could 20 years ago? 1990s.
It's
like, it doesn't matter. Right. I mean, $20 used to last me like an entire weekend, and that would be like all sorts of insanity.
Yep.
And but that's what ultimately this idea behind the Make America Great Again movement would really be about, is people just want to be able to afford their own livelihoods again.
Well, anyway, that was a big preamble. We should probably get into some of these topics.
That was a detour and a half, right?
I know, but it's okay.
Right.
I think it was
now for the show, everybody.
Okay. All of this stuff is related, anyhow. But let's get into. Let's start with this. These arrests that happened at Comic-Con, because I thought that was pretty wild. So I'm gonna share this screen, and if you guys don't know, San Diego Comic-Con happened. What was it like? Was it just this past weekend?
This past week and a half ago. I think it was through last weekend, something like that.
Yeah, and apparently there were a number of arrests. 14 arrested in San Diego Comic-Con sex trafficking sting operation. Okay, so like I used to go to cons all the time. When I lived in Chicago, when I was growing up, it was like one of my favorite things to do was to go to Wizard World, which I think they changed it to Wizard Con later or something. And I even attended the very first Anime Expo, which was in the 90s. The very, very first one. And I'm talking, it was small. It was like, somebody rented a couple of hotel rooms, and there was like a little tiny shopping area. I think I sold some posters there, and there was some people watching like anime, and that was it. It was a few cosplayers. It was very small. Like, cosplay is so much bigger now than it was when I got into it. And yeah, sex trafficking had nothing to do with it as far as I could tell. Like, I've been attending cons for a long time. Sex trafficking cons never crossed my mind that there was a relationship between the two, but apparently there is. And actually, it's not that surprising. Should I play this video? Is this the video for this thing? Are you there, John? Uh-oh, I think I dropped. He dropped, maybe? Thing is, he dropped. He'll be back. I'm gonna play this video. So Nanner Samich says, $20 bought my family a pack of value meals in the 90s. Today, one meal is about $20. Yep. That's like the most insidious way, by the way. I mean, yeah, sometimes they just raise your taxes. you know, sometimes they just like borrow money, like from foreign countries or from your kids and your kids' kids' future. But when they print it, that's probably the worst because it steals from you and there's nothing you can do about it. So, but anyway, let me see if John comes back. He seems to have dropped. Let me just message him real quick. Sorry, guys. Oh, there he is, I think. There he is. Hello? John? Oh, he dropped again. It's okay. May have to do this another way. It's maybe next time we'll try something else. I noticed that Video Ninja. I don't know if it's Video Ninja that's the problem, but just waiting for him to get back here. All right, I had to switch to a different browser to see chat. Hey bots. Hey James Writer, what was wrong with the browser that you were using? I don't know, man. Maybe we should just be on StreamYards. Maybe that's just easier. Just seems like there's a lot of like jankiness going on when I try different things. Made it to a live. Let's go. Zarank says, I remember that. A set of Whopper Junior meals for a family of 6 was close to $30. Now a single meal from Wendy's is $13 to $16 for medium. Cheaper to buy from Taco Bell. Yeah, but I don't know that it's worth the risk. I don't know if I would risk it by going to Taco Bell, though, Zaranks. That's you're playing with fire. Fire in your butthole. Taco hell is what we call it. It's so far removed from Mexican. It's not even close to Tex-Mex. So that was one thing I did love about going to Chicago was I went to my local Mexican restaurant. It was amazing. But just really just good stuff. All right, he's back. Oh, it's okay. Let me just drop you back in there. No problem. Yeah. No problem. So let me just put the appropriate link in here so that it works since you dropped out. Okay. So I don't know if it's because like your machine is stretched too thin, or maybe there's an issue with Video Ninja, but
It could be a variety of things.
Yeah.
I'm sure I've probably got way too much processing going on my system. I'm far more ambitious than my system's capable of, I think.
Yeah. James Brighter says, I have an old MacBook DVD drive, and the version of Safari wasn't loading chat. Oh, I don't know what. So, it's a MacBook. Oh, look, I don't know nothing about Mac products, guys. I'm sorry, I can't help you with that. The only thing I miss about Chicago is the food. Same here, John. Same here, Robert Johnson. What were you gonna say?
Oh, I was gonna say, yeah, I know quite a bit about like Linux and Windows, but I didn't even try to use Macs when I was in art school.
Yeah, Mac is basically a fascist company, guys. They they want to own everything.
They don't want you to have any access to anything. Yeah,
they don't want you to have access to anything. They don't want you messing around with the product. They want it all done in what is it? Their
within the limits
product
they operate.
Ecosphere is all like one unified thing. One of the things I at least appreciate about PC. Yes, it's a walled garden. That's correct. One of the things I can appreciate a little bit about PC gaming is that like, or just like the anything outside of the Mac world is that like, oh, I need a USB. Yeah, we all have USBs. We all know what those are. I mean, granted, they have their own problems. Like they keep changing. This is the USB-C Omega, and you need, but at least you can use it with other products. So, okay, but anyway, so we're about to get into the first story here. So 14 arrested in San Diego Comic-Con sex trafficking ring. So should I play this video? Looks like it's just like the link is just the video.
Yeah.
All right, let's play it.
I think you should just be able to play it right there. Yeah.
Yeah, this is it right here. So yeah, I'll just go ahead and play it. Let me know if you guys can hear this okay.
But what law enforcement found behind some masks was not just cosplay.
In here, everybody is like a disguise. It's like Halloween. Okay, they feel like they are invisible.
Director of Bilateral Safety Corridor Coalition, Marissa Ugarte, is cheering on the 35 to 50 undercover officers with the San Diego Human Trafficking Task Force working Comic-Con daily to make so many arrests.
Finding these buyers, or predators of the 14 people arrested, for me was like
10 women, one of them just 16 years old, the rest in their 20s and 30s, were liberated from their traffickers in this sting operation. Ugarte's organization will be caretaking some of those adults.
we do crisis intervention, we do case management, we find them jobs, housing, and everything.
San Diego ranks 13th for human trafficking among a list of large cities. The state attorney general, who organized this Comic-Con sting, says that he's working sex trafficking cases here all year round. During Comic-Con, task force members posed undercover as sex buyers to contact potential victims and arrest their attackers. Fake advertisements soliciting sex were also posted to arrest further buyers.
We will detect you. We will dismantle your operation. We will arrest you and hold you accountable.
The 14 arrested face solicitation charges. Attorney General Rob Bonta tells NBC7 large events that draw hundreds of thousands of people, like Comic-Con, attract traffickers and sex buyers.
These events, unfortunately, often come with a heightened level of human trafficking activity.
The Attorney General says there were numerous sex trafficking arrests in the months leading up to Comic-Con. For someone whose organization takes credit for liberating over 3,000 victims since its creation in 2005, Ugarte calls this Comic-Con sting a success.
On one operation, this is a big number.
Wow. So not something that I thought I would hear in my lifetime. But then again, like how? Okay, so what do you think, John, about this? What are your thoughts?
Well, the reason why I put it in the topics for discussion is, they get into how these events with lots of people and things like that are just kind of targets for this trafficking to take place. And that was kind of the thing, like, I just saw this kind of like as, more of this is a very small aspect of a much larger situation. And this is the kind of thing that plays out on the daily, on the reg, all the time, at Disneyland and Disney World.
Oh, yeah.
Those places are pretty much designed for human trafficking. And that's kind of why, I brought it in, because it's like they bring up this highlight point of a story, but this stuff, it's the reality that we live in. Is like, this sex trafficking is one of America's biggest money-making import export just revenue streams in certain aspects of the culture, unfortunately. And when you wonder why, like, some of the situations that we're dealing with are what they are, it's because this is the dark underbelly of the people that can afford it. I certainly, not that I'm interested in it one way or the other, but I certainly couldn't afford to do any sex trafficking if I was even so inclined, So, like, that's the thing about, like, this sex trafficking stories, is like, that should be the thing that kind of helps us kind of reframe this whole thing about who we put in positions of, like that vaulted class of people you're supposed to respect or whatever, what have you. And it's like, that's not what our political leaders or anything like that are really about, especially here now. I mean, throughout history, this isn't a thing, and so, like, all we're seeing now is just the kind of manifestation that it looks like in 2024. But that's the thing, is like, I hear people constantly talk about, like, the world is getting worse and this and that. I just think it's getting more kind of embedded and kind of, that's like, I don't think that so much our day-to-day world has changed other than, you know, the digital fire that we look at to tell our stories like we're doing right now. You know, there's superficial changes that have happened, to be sure, obviously. But you know, this kind of thing, like, this is just part of the nature of, you know, what our society kind of has, you know, and that's the reason why a movie like, you know, Sound of Freedom came out, you know, like, the stuff that, you know, like when they talk about framing narratives, you know, if we want to actually improve situations, these are the kind of things that we need to deal with in a legitimate way. And, you know, it's not by just having like a little fluff news piece on it and this and that. Like, how many people from, you know, the Epstein Island have been revealed in how many years now since all that's taken place? You know, so this is definitely an interesting story, though, like, just as a, you know, a drop of rain in the storm itself. And that to me is really kind of what I see from it, is just, you know, like, because this is such a pervasive thing now, you know, these big events, it's almost easier for that kind of stuff to play out than it is to just kind of like go and have a good time without, like, you know, being hassled by one of the 1,000 different ways that they try to, like, you know, just catalogate you into submission anymore. So I don't know, it's also that thing too that you're talking about, like the tainting of you know, situations and just kind of corrupting them from within, so you can't even, you know, it's to create the black pill. You know, now you have to be in fear when you go to you know, when you go to San Diego Comic-Con, are you going to end up being trapped? You know, it's like, so like it's important to be aware of, but also at the same time, you know, it's like, how do they sell it? You know, and what is it that they're actually trying to say in that video piece? So are they actually saying this is an issue and this is why the issue exists, or are they just trying to say this is something you should be afraid of? You know?
Yeah.
Being an
Well,
piece, I'm kind of, you know, it's.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I wonder if they're not, because, like, I don't think that NBC News cares that, for example, our border is just like open, because they're in support of the same as, you know, the same regime that opened the border. So they're okay with that. They're okay with, you know, like, whatever the downstream consequences of that might be. So then are they attaching this because they have to report on it, because it did happen and there are people, you know, that want to end sex trafficking. They want to crack down on it. So it's like, okay, well, we got to report on this because it's news. How do we do it? Well, I guess we could frame it around Comic-Con, San Diego Comic-Con, and kind of like problematize Comic-Con itself, because there's, like, you know, maybe that is a way you could spin it, or you just basically say, well, look, this, because, like, sex trafficking happens in California regardless of whether or not there's a con going on. So it is kind of like a funny time to choose to do this. Right. And of course, it's just like you said, this is just one thing that results in the arrest of 14 people. The scale at which this is happening in this country,
right,
is like beyond, like, that. This is not even a drop in the bucket. But then on top of that, again, you look at the timing of it, and there is something to be said, though, I will say, that these kind of, like, conventions have become more and more, let's say, just say degenerate or pornographic over time. Because what I was saying before you dropped out of the call was that I used to go to cons. Yeah, they've been much more corporatized as well. But when I started going to conventions, like in the 80s, they were very small, and there weren't very many people dressed up. I mean, you would occasionally get somebody in costume, but, like, it wasn't anything like it is now. It wasn't like, it was all very little local comic shops open up little booths. You know, maybe you'll get, like, fucking Bryan Singer, the actor that was in Beastmaster, or, like, some pro wrestler might be there, like the Ultimate Warrior or something, and you get, like, you'd get, like, their autograph and take a picture. But mostly it was people there to, like, buy and trade comic books. It wasn't even really about other kinds of mediums that much. Like, you might find, like, you know, like, people would be selling, like, hard to find things, like, you know, I don't know, VHS tapes of, like, really hard to find films or something. Or maybe they'll have like those old Marvel, they were like records, and it would be like records of stories. And it was like audio, like radio stories of like Spider-Man and stuff. And when it became a multi-billion-dollar industry, when anime went mainstream, when the superhero movies went big budget and popular and all that, then all of this like became massive. And all of a sudden cosplay was everything, and they would use it. I think it started in San Diego actually, where they would use these cons to make product announcements. So it's sort of like changed from like, oh, we're going here for, because we're fans of this thing, to now we're going here to see the new trailer for the new movie or the new video game demo or whatever the new promotional thing is. And they'll bring out like, A-list movie stars to make the announcements. And so it became so massive. And I think that because there was so much power and money involved, inevitably there was going to be like a dark, seedy underbelly aspect of it that probably just crept over from Hollywood, to be honest, that just got involved in that. And that sort of brings me back to, what you were saying about this, what I was saying, which is, the sex trafficking at the Comic-Con. I mean, it's not shocking to me because sex trafficking in general is a big problem. Sex trafficking in California is a really big problem, and sex trafficking in Hollywood is an extremely big problem. So like this is not at all unique to San Diego Comic-Con. Yeah, exactly, it is. And that's the thing, like it's like an open secret. We all, like you saw, was it Todd Bridges, I think his name is, from Different Strokes, who played Willis, and he, was a whole thing about like how he was sexually molested in on sets, and they've covered this in extensive other documentaries. Some of it like ends up always coming up short, like Corey Feldman, but yeah, like this is definitely going on. So it like I had a great guest a while back who had a twin sister, and she used to do Hollywood reporting. And she talked about how predatory the sort of like Hollywood elite class is when it comes to preying on famous, like people who want to be made famous, and how dark it gets. And it's not just women. I know that they tend to center it on women, but there are plenty of men who get exploited too. Just look at Cat Williams and the stuff that he has said. It's not a secret. We all know it's going on. We just have to like expose it and act on it, Anyway.
Exactly. And
yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah, go ahead. Oh, he's dropping again.
Like, so we could actually have that part of the conversation where it's like,
hello?
Like that's actually. Oh no.
John, are you there? You're dropping again. Seems to be.
Yeah, I'm still here. I just I heard you say I was dropping, so I was gonna like let you take over.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're cutting in and out a little bit. Yeah, I can hear you. There must be a little bit of a delay, dude.
Oh. All right. Well, fill time, and I will pop in and pop out.
Okay. All right. See what you can do.
Yeah.
We could try this.
Reboot my computer or something.
We could try this another way. That's okay. Go ahead.
Pop out and pop back in, and I'll be right back.
All right. Cool. All right. Well, I'm going to move on to another story. Let me know what you guys think about this one in the comments. Actually, while I got a chance here, I will do a much needed campaign. If you guys will mind humoring me for a moment, because this could be super useful. So let's do that. So here is, let me see. Let's do a promotion for, I like comic books. I'll do one for US comics. I don't know what this is going to be. So we're going to go ahead and start the promo real quick while I wait for John to come back. So, looking to help the next generation connect with and understand the founding values that led to American greatness, America Part 1 by US Comics is a new 360-page graphic novel by top comic artists explaining America's origin story. Beginning with the landing of English separatists at Plymouth Rock, this stunning graphic novel covers the ideal of a city on a hill, the scientific and spiritual awakening in colonial America, as well as iconic moments such as the Boston Massacre, the Boston Tea Party, Paul Revere's famous ride, the early battles of Lexington and Concord, the Declaration of Independence, as well as the many battles and struggles eventually leading up to the American triumph over the British at Yorktown. This patriotic and visually stunning graphic novel is guaranteed to capture the imagination of the next generation Americans in your life. You can find America Part 1, the U.S. Constitution, and other great products at uscomics.com. That's uscomics.com. And I want to thank uscomics.com for allowing me to present this this campaign. So, anyway, with all the shilling out of the way, John is back. Let me see if your audio is working. How are you doing?
Yeah. How's
okay?
This? How's this? Am I good?
Yeah, it sounds good. Yeah, that's good. What do you know? What happened? By any chance?
You know, I went ahead and I just cleared my caches. I think that, you know, I've been streaming for like the last 12 hours on and off.
Oh, so maybe you just got too much going on.
Yeah, I'm putting my laptop through its paces. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, but let's move on to another story. I got a few here. I think one that I thought was of particular interest to me is this one that I learned about this morning about Dungeons and Dragons. Are you familiar with Dungeons and Dragons, John?
I have not played in quite some time, but my nephew, he generally plays with his friends on like a game night at least once or twice a month. So I'm still kind of on the periphery of it. Might actually end up being like their camera guy. They take stuff on at some point. So yeah, I love it.
Oh, okay, all right. So you might do some. Yeah. Lisa Brighton is the person I was talking about. Thank you, Zeranx. Yeah, she's great, and she's quite active on Twitter talking about men's issues and stuff. That was with regards to the sort of predatory nature of Hollywood, and yeah. So that's the thing about the sex trafficking. So I don't know if you guys are interested in this D&D thing, but I thought I would bring it up. So when it comes to like my interest in culture is that like the more sort of decentralized it is, I think the better it generally is, because it gives people more freedom to use it in the way that they want to. Now, when you watch a film, for example, or read a book, you are getting the narrative given to you as it is created by the people who made it. That means if it's made by committee, then you're going to get the view of the entire committee or the corporation or the cathedral or the oligarchy or whatever it is. And that could be bad because they may not have any talent, and you end up with whatever, slop is being put out by Hollywood these days. Or if you are reading a book, we have come to, I've come to learn that for a long time, people who write fiction, the entire fiction literature, let's say, industry is heavily gatekept by ideologues. And so if you make science fiction, if you tell stories, then the people are saying you have to tell stories about specific things. They want a specific tone. They want it to, so like it's heavily monitored. And you can just look at, for example, the Sad Puppies, who I've spoken to, who were writers, that wrote about their own versions of their own fictional stories. Some of these writers were Christians, but like they were all sort of like they were not a part of the establishment, and so they were frowned on, and they were more or less like, shunned by people who wrote. So this becomes a problem. I mean, people can independently publish, and they do all the time, but it is an obstacle. And when it comes to video games, you have some, and movies, you have this thing again where you have more and more people who have an interest in top-down control over your content. And so video games today are mostly, especially the AAA space, is basically like trash across the board because the people who make it hate the thing that they're doing.
Trash indeed.
Yeah, it's trash across the board. They want you. They're interested in using a brand that you might be familiar with. This is why everything is all about like franchises and sequels for them. And they try to hook you in with a live service or some kind of like financial incentive to stay with them. Meanwhile, they give you subpar quality. And they call it AAA because it's coming from an expensive. And then you have to buy like passes, and it's just ridiculous, right? So the one thing that I thought was always sort of outside of that is tabletop gaming, because tabletop gaming, of course, it comes with its own disadvantages, which is that you have to coordinate with people locally, and you have to you don't have to. I guess you could do it online, but there are limits to it as well. But Dungeons and Dragons, or which is basically like the grandfather of all tabletop gaming, but we can look at it. Let's try to look at it as tabletop gaming in general, because when I say D&D, people start telling me like, well, I don't play D&D, I play this other thing, but it doesn't matter. It's all the same thing, and it faces the same problems. But like D&D is the it's kind of the, what is it? How do I put this? It is the primary target because it's the biggest franchise. These people are only drawn to things that are successful and huge, but that doesn't mean that smaller things are immune, right? So this is like an important thing for us to know. So anyway, what am I talking about? I have this article from Scientific American. So are you familiar with Scientific American, John?
Yeah, I dabble in it from time to time. It's not one of my I read every day things, but I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Tabletop gaming was yeah, I know, dude. I was playing it since I was 14. So Scientific American used to be like a credible scientific source for papers and studies and such. And I only know that because my wife was really into Scientific American, but they have essentially drank the Kool-Aid of all of this woke anti-science garbage that we're now swimming in. And they put out this article. It's an opinion piece, takes 5 minutes to read. And it's entitled, Dungeons and Dragons is Shedding Race in Gaming. Here's Why It Matters. Now, this is something that they've been pushing towards slowly for a while. And I called this out like probably in 2001 or 2002. So it was a while ago. And one of the things that I noticed they were doing is they were starting to like in the world building of D&D. Okay. I think the when you are playing a tabletop game, there is something called Rule 0. Are you guys familiar with Rule 0? Does anybody know what Rule 0 is? The Rule 0 is essentially at your table with your friends, you basically decide as a group what like rules you're going to use to have the maximum amount of fun, and that nothing that exists in the rules that comes outside of that should have any influence over what you do in the privacy of your own home and your table with your friends. Okay. So because it is all like you are using it's house rules, but like Rule 0 is if the rules aren't fun, then don't use the rules. But what it really is something akin to, make the game work for your friends, right? Because ultimately the social experience of gaming with your friends is paramount to anything else. It comes first. Now, these busybodies in our hobbies, they have a problem with Rule Zero because they have a problem with people creating their own fun without the oversight of like these people, these elites on top. And they have a very strong reaction to not being able to control their behavior. So what they have been doing in D&D is trying to change fundamental things about the rules, not just the rules, but even like the way that the settings are defined, the way that the cosmology operates. Do you see what I'm saying? Of D&D. Mm-hmm. So Gary Gygax, the creator of D&D, Gary Gygax, he created an entire cosmology, and he was a big giant nerd. Like, I have his original books, and they're still pretty dense to read through. Like, I can't read the Dungeon Master's Guide. It's like, but I still own it, and if you want that amount of detail, you can use it. But I don't think I've ever followed or played any D&D system where I followed exactly every single rule ever, because I just wanted to make it fast and simple so that we could just get involved and play. And at the end of the day, nobody really cared that much. Right. Like if we didn't understand every rule or whatever. So friends, ultimately. Yes, yeah. Yes, you are. Yes. But like one of the reasons why D&D works really well is in the way that Gary Gygax organized. It's like the entire setting, not just like the world your characters live in. Like, for example, I don't know, you could make up your own world. I know I did when I was, playing as a teenager. I wanted to make up everything, so I made up my own little world. But even if you didn't want to like spend the time and you were just like, look, I'm just going to go with, Greyhawk or the Forgotten Realms, and I'm going to use that as my setting. Gary Gygax didn't just create those settings, but he created the worlds outside of those worlds that sort of like organizes all of reality. And I don't know if it's a very meta thing that he did when he built his planar, they call them the inner planes and the outer planes. I don't know if you are familiar with this, if I'm getting like too deep into the D&D lore for you or whatever.
Oh no, by all means.
Okay, cool. So like you are familiar with, in Dungeons and Dragons, there are alignments, and the alignment is a core aspect of D&D. Now, of course, at your table, maybe you don't like alignment. It's fine, like whatever. But I think that alignment is an important piece of structure, and it's a useful tool for how to play your character. So like when you make a character, you decide an alignment, and it is basically whether or not, like it is a measure of their morals and their ethics. And so like, whether or not they are ethical people it falls on the scale between law and chaos, and whether or not they are moral people falls on the scale between good and evil. And you have people who are somewhere in between and all of that. And there's plenty of room, but mostly it's intended to be. Go ahead. Were you going to say something?
Oh, I was gonna say, so in a weird way, like this oddly, yeah. I was gonna say this actually dovetails with what we were talking about at the beginning in that little tangent. Like it actually had purpose.
Yeah. So it does, right? So
right,
right. So when you make a character and you pick up the alignment, you're essentially saying, this is the way my character will operate. So and it's supposed to be a useful tool to make your character more interesting when you role play them. And of course, there should be like a consideration for, okay, what's going to be something that is going to make the gameplay fun and interesting, but not be disruptive. Like you don't want to be chaotic evil and everybody else is good, because that's sort of like inevitably is going to lead to some conflict unless you're okay with that. But like at the end of the day, this is the purpose of this. And the thing is, the alignments they're not just something that your character behaves in accordance to. They are something that is affected by the world of Dungeons and Dragons itself. because there are planar parts of the world where the embodiments of those forces exist. So there is a, for example, there are lawful planes, there are good planes, there are neutral planes, evil planes, and chaotic planes. And so for some, there's like, overlap. Like there's like a lawful good plane, and it's called the seven heavens, and that's where the angels live. And so it's like a world that is defined by the alignment, which in turn, sort of downstream from that, maybe it has a little impact on your character. So there is a existential way of like building the world out. And Gary Gygax was a Christian, and he did a lot of deep dives into not just his theology, but also in mythology and the ways that all of these sort of like ancient Babylonian, Greek, pagan, whatever, and he made them all fit into his cosmology that he created. And the characters that live in your world, they also are part of that machine, right? That system. And that's kind of interesting and unique, because I don't think a lot of other games do that at all. I mean, plenty of other tabletop games let you decide your personality and everything, but for the most part, people's actions will play out in a pragmatic sense to just be like, well, this is what my guy would do, so I'm going to do this. But in D&D, if you're thinking of it in this, like, it's almost like you're all part of this greater tapestry that you're not aware of. And it's kind of like how the Greek gods would, in old stories, they would move people around like chess pieces, and they would play out things, amongst each other and use the people as proxies for that. And I think that was to create more interesting kinds of stories that you could tell. Now, they have since been trying to ambiguate that a lot more, to where, for example, this idea that beings from the heavenly planes and beings from the lower planes, like the abyss or the nine hells, for example, are that there was a very clear delineation. Like, yes, these are demons, these are devils, they live down here. And if you look at the way that like the governments of like hell are set up, it's like people constantly like being litigious against each other, using the rules to destroy each other. They're trying to usurp each other. Like they're engaging in constant corruption and lies and all this stuff that happens in hell. And that's like it's a bureaucracy. Like it's basically like our governments today. But like this is happening in hell. Right. Meanwhile, in heaven, everybody knows their place and they're just like fine with it, right? Like, so it's like a different attitude. And then there are parts like the chaotic planes, like Pandemonium, where there's like no one runs anything. Everything is absolutely up for grabs, and nobody gives a shit. So it's really cool because there's lots of fun things you can play with in terms of that. But it does exist nonetheless in an absolute hierarchy of like what is best and what is less good, right? There is a good and evil hierarchy. There is a law and chaos hierarchy. And I think that these new people, this new breed of gamers, they've been trying to essentially, let's say, crush the distinctions. So the idea is to say, well, everybody, like there is no right and wrong. This is like the thing with Star Wars, right? Like that, like with the Acolyte, they did the interviews, and the people were like, well, the thing that's great about Star Wars is that there is no right and wrong. And it's like, no, actually there is. That's specifically the thing about Star Wars, and they've been doing that with D&D as well. Yeah, right, it is. Like, but this is what they've been doing with Dungeons and Dragons, is they're trying to do this sort of moral, postmodern, moral ambiguity thing, because they like the idea of evil characters that are actually doing something good, like in their mind. Like they're trying to they're blurring the lines purposefully, and they've been doing this for a long time. And they've been blurring the lines on everything. So what is the purpose of this? So the cosmology that Gary Gygax created essentially creates a series of boundaries. There are boundaries. In the middle, you have the prime material plane. This is where people live. And in that world, it is like a mixed bag. There are good people, there are bad people. There are forces of evil at work to conquer and destroy. There are forces of good that are trying to protect and thrive, and flourish and live in the Shire or whatever. And so these people believe that those things should not have distinctions. And in an effort to destroy distinction, the first thing they do is they bring the fringe into the center. So do you see what do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah, they call it widening the gap. It's kind of like it's your steps towards bringing about authoritarian kind of tyrannical rule. Whatever you want to label it as I'll leave that to you. But authoritarianism by any label or name is still authoritarianism. So yeah, it's that whole kind of creating the opening so that they can actually, it's that whole problem action solution kind of mindset.
Yes. So what they do is they say, okay, what we want to do is we want to bring the fringe towards the center. But ultimately, the goal is to essentially make the fringe into the center and push the center out to the fringe. The way that we normally organize our worldview is we see what we consider to be normal as generally good, right? So it's normal that we all we want to love each other, and that men and women would find each other, fall in love, get married, have kids, and start a family. This is normal stuff. I'm not saying anything absurd. I'm not saying anything controversial. But to these people, that is controversial. And this is why they constantly attack the family, and they attack normality. They attack the idea that, for example, people, if left to their own devices, will generally want to be with people like themselves. So, for example, if we're in, Japan, Japanese people are going to want to fall in love with, and marry other Japanese people that share the same language and culture and religious background, and they will hopefully do that for their children and their children's children. There's nothing wrong with that, but we are supposed to see this today as something wrong, right? We're supposed to see, what we're supposed to be promoting is, I don't know, as much of a melting pot or mosaic of cultures as possible, regardless of whether or not those cultures are actually compatible, right? Go ahead.
Yeah. At a certain point, though, that melting pot, though, it becomes so superficial that when people talk about what's the deal with modern relationships and this and that, it goes back to what you're talking about in terms of what do you have in your commonality to actually be invested into someone. I was married to a woman who, quite honestly, I was a bauble on a string. I used to be young and silky smooth, more like this cartoon character that everybody gets to see than the fur burger guy who's sitting behind the camera. So I was quote unquote man pretty. And so I was just there to kind of suit her want and desire, ostensibly. And when that wasn't filled to the nth degree for whatever reason, and that's the nature of this superficial love that they're trying to promote, where it's not actually love. It's kind of almost the antithesis of it, because it's all about, well, what does it look like? Well, how does it feel immediately? And it's not about being invested or actually trying to have some, parody, somebody that you can actually have a life with, because once it becomes all about just superficiality and just the thing where it's well, why would we need to have a background that's anywhere similar to each other or anything like that? It's so you can actually identify with each other. So some point in time, 5 years down the road, when something happens, it's not just all of a sudden whoa, who the hell am I involved with? you know, you're actually kind of pretty much like you're already there with them. And I think here in America, the idea has been that because we're a melting pot, you know, we don't have to worry about our own cultural aspects of where we came from, this and that, because we just define our culture as Americans. However, you know, like that has kind of now played out to some very, you know, just flabbergasting extremes where, you know, it's just kind of like we've almost gone as obscene with it as we possibly can and lost all the nuance and sophistication. You know, so your relationships generally kind of swing erratically like a pendulum rather than just kind of like being this constant barometer of how you're moving forward and being involved with someone who's your partner along the way, you know.
Yeah. So yeah, I think what is next, so I brought all that up because the again, this goes back to the relationship between things that are happening in our world and things that are happening in our culture. And it starts with these things. They appear to be very small that happen, like, you know, at the local level, in our little hobbies, in our little communities, in our schools, whatever. And then they sort of like bleed out. I mean, the people who are running the film and games industry now are the people who were writing fan fiction in the dark corners of Tumblr just 10 years ago. And now they're Leslie Headland. Right. She's a Tumblrista that now has a job working at Disney. And so like we are feeling the effects of our inability or unwillingness to gatekeep when we should have gatekept. And I think that what will help us now is to understand what exactly is going on. So the thing about, I'm just going to say the left, okay? For the sake of simplicity, so you guys understand. The thing about the left or the woke left is that they're not able to create anything new. So what they do is they invert whatever was established because they believe that whatever it is that we have already supported, built up, been involved with, and this is mostly men's spaces that this happens to. The reason why they change it is because they want to control it, but they don't like it as it exists, and they hate the fact that we support it. So they want to undo that, and what they do is they go into a space, they problematize the space, they say there's something wrong with this, there's something, you know, and they'll call it problematic or bigoted or whatever it is. And they'll problematize it, then pathologize it, then they'll say, we can save this thing. Then they demand a seat at the table. Then they get a seat at the table. Then they demand to put all their friends at the table. Then they take over the table. Then they kick you out. And they destroy it. And of course, they walk away like, well, I guess it wasn't meant to be. Like, they don't care because they were never invested to begin with. So here's the next stage of this. And to give you a sense of like how top down this is, Scientific American is why I mention it. It's not a small website. It used to be one of the top, you know, like, I guess, respected scientific websites when it came to what we came to, like, what we believed was like trustworthy scientific news and not like tabloid nonsense. But of course, if you've been doing this as long as I've been doing this, you know that the people who are supposedly the most credible are often the most biased and the most cringe. So, the Fish Got Nuke says, Brian, man, you need a male avatar, my guy. I can switch it to, I just think that the Vivian is symbolically important, but I can switch it if it's a big deal.
Yeah.
So, okay.
I don't know. I mean, like, you know, I would say if you ever do change the avatar, Vivian's got to always be like, you know, prominently placed in like a picture frame or something, because I mean, she's
I know
the state of all of this.
Yeah, she is, right? She is the avatar of video games. But I do have another one if you really hate it. I know that some people, they can't stand the Vivian. So, but okay. Let's get into the article. So the nerd culture powerhouse is rebranding its elves, dwarves, and orcs, previously referred to as races, and moving towards the use of the term species. Dungeons & Dragons now reigns as a cultural powerhouse, the OG of tabletop role-playing. In its 50th anniversary year, the storied fantasy role-playing game is now making a long overdue and noteworthy correction to its scientifically benighted treatment of race. Attacked by religious figures for supposed demonic ties in the 1980s, part of a broader trend in that decade termed the Satanic Panic, the game and its trappings now rule popular culture. You sit at a table with some pizza, dice, and friends, and collectively engage with the story, wherein you are a warrior or wizard out on a tale of heroism in a sword and sorcery world. What's new is that in September, the game's owner, Wizards of the Coast, will release a player's handbook that changes the terminology of its characters' physiological types, previously referred to as races, and replaces them with the term species. Now look, this seems like a small thing. No, it seems like a small thing. We're just changing the terminology. But I think this is very, very sinister, because the reason why they find the term race like that it needs to change is because they have already spent like 60 years making the word race into a poisonous, toxic term. So they've already demonized the word race itself so much that now they're like, we're going to have to change it because it doesn't mean what it used to mean. But it still means the same thing it always meant. You're the ones that have added a tremendous amount of like poisonous, toxic value to the word. And now they're like, well, I guess it's got to go. So it's like, imagine if they destroy something over time and then they say, I'm sorry, you can't use that anymore because we destroyed it. I mean, that's what this is, right?
Mm-hmm. That's very much what it is. I mean, this is, you know, like you were saying, the whole thing about those who can't like create for themselves, they seek to just pollute and kind of overtake the thing. Like, it's parasitic, you know, and that parasitic nature is a big contingent of the top-down control model, where it's like, well, we need to find a thriving host that we can, you know, supplant ourselves on and ultimately gain the benefits and reap the rewards, and they'll have to deal with all the downside. You know, and I mean, it's completely parasitic in its expression and its intent, and you know, and so that's ultimately kind of the thing that, you know, that I would kind of look at from why they're doing this. It's what you're saying in terms of, you know, changing the language, change the culture to get people to, you know, kind of get away from certain words that have been codified for whatever reason. Like it's that whole reason why they talk about media literacy and this and that. It's so they can undermine language. You know, it's like that poem I read last week that I had written about, like, you know, you change language to, you know, change culture ultimately, and it's through these various steps and ways that you just kind of break someone's psyche, because, you know, you're looking at a world that's been completely inverted on itself, but it's still acting like it's right side up, you know, and so like makes everybody feel like they're on crazy pills.
Yeah, and again, I think it is to it behooves us to not let them control this conversation, because it is about, like, once they take away your ability to form ideas through your words, because that's what this is about. It's just an attack on language. When we talk about, I know that race in D&D seems like a small thing, but you got to like look at the bigger picture here. They are attacking the word race itself. They'll start by doing it here. Then they'll do it everywhere else. Mm-hmm. Then all of a sudden, like, people like, oh, look, the conversation on race is already really, really damaged. Like, it's on its last legs. Like, think about it like this. Okay. There was this term. I was talking to my friend about this in Chicago. And somebody brought up that they were white. And I know that it's in your name. You're a problematic white guy. I said, yeah, why are we even using this word white? And like, I've been trying to, like, there's a few words that I want to, like, you know, try to like get to while doing these shows. where I'm saying we should stop using this word. One of the words I think we should stop using is the word white to describe a person's race, and I put that in scare quotes when I say it, because I think it's identity theft at the end of the day. And here's what I mean, okay? So you go to Africa, right? And you go to like Nigeria, and then you go to Ghana, and then you go to Zimbabwe, and then you go to South Africa, and you tell those guys that they're all black, like the guy over there. Tell the guy that's part of the, that lives in Zimbabwe, that he is the same as the guy from Uganda. And they'll probably look at you like you're crazy, because they're not. Like there are countless ethnic groups in Africa, and I'm just using it as one example. There are countless ethnic groups in Russia, okay, that they have like different genetics that come from different places. They're differently traveled. People who live in Eastern Europe countries, like I don't know, Moldova or Estonia, they're not the same as people from Spain, but we consider them all white. And so when I was telling my friend, why do we call it all white when it's obvious that they're different, they look different, they speak different languages, they have different cultures, they have different religions, they're geographically in different parts of the world, like whether, Canadians, South Americans, like sometimes they count as white, sometimes they count as Latino. The language, the way that we describe this is all a mess. And I was talking to my friend about this, and we both were agreed, because he's Italian, right? And but he was born in America, so he's not like Italian. Like if he went to Italy, he wouldn't necessarily feel at home, right? But he's nothing like a guy from Ireland, right? So we're talking, and I'm like, it's identity theft, because the truth is that like what we are comes more from there's a more of an immediate identity. Like your name is like kind of like a better marker, right? Like where's your father from? Where's his father from? And I've noticed that with modern people, very few of us know our family history, and we're very disconnected from our tree, from our family tree, and where it goes to. So like when people ask me where I'm from, so like my parents were born in Puerto Rico, but Puerto Rican is not a race, right? Because Puerto Ricans are made up of Africans, natives and Spanish and a little bit of other things like Middle Eastern, whatever is sprinkled in there. And so it's like, well, I can't make it. I'll just say I'm American, but my family's from Puerto Rico, and that's it. And I don't need anyone to tell me what that, like how white that makes me, because I think that is a I just don't think it's a very useful way to talk about stuff. And I say this to the white identitarian types too, because they also make this mistake. Go ahead.
Right. And to prove your point, like the whole reason that the name of the character is Problematic White Guy is just because of what you're saying.
Yeah.
Because there is an identity theft. I myself, like my background, my great grandmother's full-blood Native American, and I've got like this aspect where it's like, from a top-down perspective, I could get government assistance by claiming to be a native, but I'm like, I look like I'm from the tribe of Chad, so that would be ludicrous, and I'm not going to do that, right?
Yeah,
for a variety of reasons, but it's still that thing where it's like, I've had certain things happen during my weird journey to being part of this, larger MAGA kind of, I guess, movement. To where when I was coming into this, it has opened up in a way that, from being Problematic White Guy, like I found out that for all of me trying to be an ally, allies are all lies. And as soon as they get the opportunity to throw you off the train for not singing, right in line with the hymnal, and like if you're off pitch by 1 degree, you're out, right? And so like that's when it was just kind of like I got reduced to being a Problematic White Guy. Culturally speaking. And so that's where I was like, all right, so like I'm going to take that. I'm gonna take that right now. And I made problematicwhiteguy.com. I own that. So like if this ever picks up and becomes a thing, I do already own it. And it was just kind of like this whole idea of like, well, if you're gonna sit here and like, try to make this about anything, I don't even necessarily see myself as white. I'm obviously pale as fuck. But like,
but you're
white that I have a problem with is white collar,
right,
but
right.
on that reductionist scale, and that's what I mean by and so it's like, all right, well, if you want to put all this shit on me, well, then let me just go and take that thing you're trying to put on me, how you want to do it, and I'll fashion it into my own little, hat or whatever, and I'll wear it around proudly and take all that away from you. And so like, that's the whole reason on why I call this thing Problematic White Guy, is because I'm just trying to I'm putting it right there, right next to me. So you got John Richards, Problematic White Guy. Most people just call me John because they don't think of me as actually being problematic. They're like, you're like the least problematic guy I encounter online. It's like, well, you don't necessarily know me through every event that I've been through. And I'm sure there's people out there that I will have my detractors, obviously. But, what people gravitate to, it's like that article I put in here about you become your name over time and the way that people kind of amplify you. And so like that is this thing about changing the language, change culture so that you can kind of demonize the in group to the out group and make the out group the in group. And that is exactly what all this stuff that we've been talking about today, for the theme of today's show has been about, is just kind of like this, manipulation of what's at the surface so that you never even get to the center.
Yes,
and
that's right.
Getting there to
It
the
is about
center
that.
is where we can actually find our commonality and start to get past a lot of these barriers.
Yeah, well, they're against unity, which is like what I was saying. The literal definition of the unholy is to be against the things that connect us, the unity of our very being. I mean, let me just, I'll put it this way, for fear of, let me read some super chats. Actually, I got a couple of Rumble rants. Thank you. Zeranx gave us, is that a 5? I can't see it. $5, I think, and says there's also the case that in making them species rather than races, humans being considered a single race allow for the fragmentation of the woke that the woke indulge in real life. Yes. Well, that's true. Yes. Yeah. But it is about, like I said, creating the unholy, which is about dividing people. Then Zeranx gives us another $2 and says, also interesting from edamonline.com in heraldry from 1560s, sinister indicates left to the left. Thank you. That's nice. I'll look into that, Zeranx. I really appreciate that. And no, I think it's super cool. Yeah, I think it's super cool.
Yeah. Dude.
So what I was going to
what?
Yeah. Yes, for sure. Look, dude. There was what was that show? So LeVar Burton was on one of these shows where you learn about your roots.
Reading Rainbow?
No. After Reading Rainbow. So after Star Trek: The Next Generation. No, he was on this show that I think PBS put it on, and they were basically going into his DNA and saying, oh, here are like some important people from your ancestry. And I remember they had Angela Davis on once. Angela Davis was a notorious communist that for whatever reason is not in prison. And she she learned that she had people on the Mayflower in her ancestry. And of course she was really offended by this, right? Because there's this oversimplified narrative of, oh, well, if you came here as colonizers, you're obviously racist, slave-owning bastards, and therefore I can't have any relationship to you because I have cast you in this monstrous role. But she had them in her own history. And of course it makes sense. This isn't shocking to me. And then LeVar Burton learned that I think his
history.
Yeah, he learned that I think his great-grandfather, so it wasn't even that long ago, fought for the Confederacy in the Civil War. Mm-hmm. And he was just so shocked by this. Right. And the thing is, I thought to myself when I was watching it, I was like, what's interesting about this is that if he knew his family tree, if he knew that, if he actually had a record of his fathers and his father's father and his father before him, going back enough, he would know that, and he probably wouldn't be, an angry, race activist with a chip on his shoulder because he would understand the history of his humanity and everyone else's is complicated. It's a little bit messy. Things are not simple. They're not black and white. And that there's some honor in that, like to and dignity in this understanding. It's humbling on purpose. And I was saying this is the reason why, because these people, it is unholy to divide people. This is like the undoing of what is a unified like story that we all share in. Okay. So when you break that up by creating racial tensions where none exist, and you tell people, well, you are
the center of the television.
Yeah, well, you tell
like old school technology.
I mean, how can you be LeVar Burton, for example, who's probably a multimillionaire actor, that he is oppressed and that he believes it? Like he legitimately believes this stuff. And I know people who are doing really well financially, but because they're black, they think that they're oppressed and that it could all be taken away from them, I guess, at a moment's notice. And it's like, no, you are not living in reality. You are living in fear because you have been told that you are surrounded by enemies when you are surrounded by your brothers and sisters. And this is just the truth of it. And they don't see that. And part of the reason why is because they don't know their history. And I was talking to another guy named Peter Wright, who writes about gynocentrism on a website. And I was like, do you think that the reason why so many black men, and I'm using black men as my example, are so embittered towards white people and basically every other group because they have the lowest outgroup preference to other groups according to data? And I said, do you think it's because they don't know who their father is, or they don't, or at some point, like whether it's their father or their grandfather or their great grandfather, they are completely disconnected from their line, and so they only live in their present, right? So like, I live in my world, but I know my father and I know my grandfather on both sides. And that helps ground me in a larger story that I'm a part of, right? Instead of just like, it's just me and everybody else is like an obstacle potentially, right? And so I don't know, does that make sense? Like what I wonder about.
Totally makes sense. I mean, yeah, I mean, because it's like I said earlier when I came home, is because, even though I don't ideologically align with my family in a lot of ways, it's still my family, and so when my dad was, quite obviously going to die, I had to come home to be here to see him off. I mean, he's my dad, like, yeah, he may be far from perfect, but I still care about the guy. And like, that's the thing that we kind of have lost track of along the way. Like you were saying about, the brothers and sisters that we're surrounded by, that we treat like, strangers and enemies and just highly suspicious of in every way, shape and form.
So, I think that's good. I'm going to get to this because I want to know this is going to get it back to the D&D thing. Yep. All right, announced in 2022. So, the company's action was motivated by a view that species is a term that didn't require explanation and that highlighted the fantastical nature of the game's non-human options. According to Jeremy Crawford, games director of Dungeons and Dragons. Go ahead.
Also seems like a little bit of nudging towards the transhumanist movement.
Absolutely. I think scale. Oh no, I think that's true. Like, yeah, because I mean, the word races was used because it was a simple way to make the point. Like, there are dwarves and elves and humans, and they're different. And so we'll differentiate them this way. And I think that, but people have made the word race so politically charged that, like, gamers will be like, what do you mean race? And now we're reacting to that instead of saying, no, calm down.
Right. Bad kid brains. Kind of like reacting rather than being able to respond. And so like everything has to be done in like this most basic homogenized language. So it's the Beijing and graying of everything. So it's nice and soft and easy to approach, and you don't have to think about it too much. It's right there. It's been so minimalized. It's like, well, what's the point of even dealing with it then? It's just like, it's baby shit. You know, like I'm a grown ass man. I don't need my life to be reduced down to like treating like make me a toddler for like 70 years or however long I walk this mortal coil.
Yeah, and I mean, again, too, is that like the word species is very science fiction-y for a fantasy setting, right? Like in the Star Wars role-playing game, they call them species. If you wanted to play like a Gungan or whatever Greedo's race is, or like a Wookiee, those were called species, but that's more in line with the science fiction setting.
There's also that.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say it's why the reason why I actually use the term transhumanism when I am talking about this stuff, and I don't just talk about transgenderism, because transgenderism is that's the turning on of the switch. That's the ignition. The engine that fuels that switch is the actual transhumanism. And so transhumanism is about eliminating yourself completely from the human race. It's about like, I'm going to live in a robot. I'm going to have my consciousness be separate from God, and I'm going to be here in this liminal like temporal space and time, and get out of the system of eternity because I have enough technological wizardry, or sorcery more appropriately is the best way to say that, technological sorcery to make that happen. And that's the world that we're seeing play out by degrees, day by day, that we're building into. And that is exactly why I call it transhumanism, because this whole idea of like, well, I don't want to be a human. I don't want to be under God's rule. I don't want to be a manifestation. Like, these people separate themselves from, any aspect of anything that goes beyond their willingness to comprehend. And so everything has to be small and inward, and like, and so like their connection to God is lost because they are. And like, there's no, to them, no bearing to try to find it, because they're perfectly happy with what they have. Like, it's like, I used to tell my ex-wife, part of the reason my ex-wife is, you want to want things. And, because when you're actually confronted with the thing that you quote unquote want, you always back away or find a way to detour and get away from it. Because you're at the point of actualization in the wanting. When you actually get beyond the wanting and the actual, oh shit, I have to earn this, they don't want any of that, So that's kind of like the thing that fuels a lot of this is just, I want it now, and I don't want to think about any consequence or be invested. It's
well, there's a reason,
and trite, and
yep. There's a reason the Wachowski siblings, who created The Matrix, which was a very transhumanist movie, ended up becoming trans themselves, and they're probably going to continue down that road until, like, even this fleshy body is not, like, it's not right for me, and I got to change this another way. And also, it is this belief that your body is a prison. It's a Gnostic idea that, like, you've been lied to about who you are, and that the spirit is imprisoned in this body, and that you weren't made exactly the way you were supposed to be. So anyway, as far as like the word species goes, like I said, it's kind of science fiction-y. If you think about like what Gygax or like other people who played tabletop games were inspired by, it was probably works like Tolkien. And if you read Tolkien's works, they refer to the other races as like, peoples, or they'll just refer to them as they are, like the elves, the dwarves, the men. But like, even with the word men, when Tolkien refers to men, he's not referring to males. He's referring to man, the humans, right? Men and women. But this is another one of these words that they're going to change, because they don't like the word men to refer to people, to all humans. They prefer men and women, and because they get caught up in these words. So these people destroy the words, and then they claim to want to fix it for the people who have been
women. They'll use like peoples.
Yeah, or
because
them's
more inclusive,
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
All right. Anyway, so I just want to get to why they're okay with this. So it says Wizards of the Coast should be congratulated for this move, both for the company stated reasons and scientifically as a correction from the long-running error of describing species as races. Kids playing a fun game will no longer pick up a botched eugenical notion of race alongside their 20-sided dice. A botched eugenical notion of race. Did you guys hear that? Kids playing they're praising the idea because they think it's more scientifically accurate. This is the cult of science, by the way. Because we should be calling it species, because made up fantasy creatures, there has to be a science to it, okay? Some players welcome the change and rationale behind the shift to species. However, others felt insulted, arguing Wizards of the Coast was giving into a woke mentality, fearful of invoking the word race. Still others appreciated the move but felt it didn't go far enough. They recommended the removal of other material that could be deemed offensive. This last group is highly critical of the biological essentialism. This goes back to your comment about transhumanism, by the way. Parroting scientific and evolutionary language to explain marked social and cultural differences between groups that comes with the use of terms like race to distinguish between humans and others like elves, dwarves, orcs, particularly those of stereotyped real-world associations made at times to these fantasy species. So they're outing themselves again. Let's take a look at this link. Real-world associations. I think they're going to talk about orcs are not black people. Privilege, power, and Dungeons and Dragons, how systems shape racial and gender identities in tabletop role-playing games. So again, these people create the problem. They make it problematized by saying, don't you think that this is black people we're talking about when we talk about orcs? And then when people say, can you please not do that? They blame those people. But they do this. They did this.
Yep.
Oh my God. All right. Let me see. There was biological essentialism. So this is obviously just them ruining something else. And by the way, they've already done this thing where they've essentially removed any real distinctions between different races in D&D, like dwarves, elves, humans, half-elves, tieflings, whatever. And essentially, they're all the same, and they just have a slightly different aesthetic. So they're basically all... Yeah, they're all humans in cosplay now. There's nothing essential about being an elf or a dwarf.
They made all the attack rates exactly the same.
Yeah, they've gotten rid of all the racial distinctions. Yes. And another thing too. So they're over here blaming. Here's another bit. So you guys can see where this mentality is coming from. Okay. As a social scientist who studies male-dominated subcultures. Oh no. I have done research that puts me in spaces where I delved into reactions, to issues of race in gaming. A key question is this. Given how charged the term race has been, only by you, why would games use it to discuss differences that have nothing to do with the way we traditionally use the word? Dungeons and Dragons is not the only game to use the term in this way. So many other digital and analog fantasy offerings. But the celebrated game created by Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson in 1973 arguably set the standard that these others have followed. Gygax and Arneson leaned heavily on popular fiction and folklore to construct their game world, and links to fantasy author J.R.R. Tolkien's works, which were first penned in an age of colonial racism, are undeniable. In his Lord of the Rings trilogy, Tolkien commonly used the word race to characterize differences amongst humans, elves, hobbits, all the societies that populated his novels. Because this was familiar territory for so-called sword and sorcery fans, so-called sword and sorcery, not real fans apparently, the creators of Dungeons and Dragons simply co-opted it as it would create a recognizable point of reference for potential gamers. The biological essentialism ran deep in the game. In its earliest versions, the authors distinguished between humans and other groups, collectively called demi-humans. So, of course, this is meant to be like downplaying them. Demi-humans are essentially goblins, orcs, hobgoblins, etc., gnolls, kobolds. Notably, players who chose to be dwarves, elves, halflings, or other demi-humans Oh no, I'm sorry. You're right. These are demi-humans. Were the other races, the goblins and stuff? Those were called humanoids, which I guess is even more dehumanizing. So I don't know. They were lesser beings. They could only have certain professions in the game, referred to as classes, could only progress so far, had built-in limitations. For example, sturdy but somewhat slow and dour dwarves had constitution advantages, but limits on their dexterity and charisma. Further, all demi-humans had some form of seeing in the dark, which marked them as something in between humans and animals. Okay, so this is the logic that they're using. Because Gary Gygax made the humanoids or the demi-humans distinct and gave them special advantages, but limited them in other ways. This was for game balance purposes. These people are saying, "Oh, it's because Gary Gygax."
Indeed.
Yeah. But what they're saying is, no. Gary Gygax, as a human with human privilege, saw humans as superior to elves, dwarves, and halflings. Yeah, and half elves, because despite the fact that from as long as I've been playing D&D, there has at least been one person in every party I've ever run that wanted to be the elf. Like it just wanted to be the elf because they liked elves for whatever reason. It was just like the most attractive before Dritz blew up and everybody wanted to be him. They just wanted to be an elf. Yeah.
Back in the day, like I used to I could not walk 5 feet for a certain period of my life during Lord of the Rings without you look like Legolas. And then until I got older, and then now here Aragorn. So I just, I mean, neither is necessarily a bad comparison.
No.
Like I'm always just when World of Warcraft, I was working at Best Buy at the time years ago, and the Blood Elf came out. I had people that I work with. They would always just come up to me with copies and say, "Hey, man, can you sign my copy?" Because the elf was on the front of the fucking game box. So yeah. Like I'm one of those people who I don't necessarily try to be an elf. I have people try to make me an elf.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess the one thing I would say, there's a couple things I want to say about it. So they tried to make this comparison to how D&D was like attacked by like the satanic panic and like the conservative Christians, right, were hating on it or whatever. And I want to say in defense of the satanic panic, there were some culty things that happened, but more than that, so like my mom, she didn't like me playing D&D. When I was a teenager, she'd be like, oh, she bought into the hype. She saw Amazing Monsters with Tom Hanks. She thought that was real shit. She didn't want me to play D&D. Okay. But you know what she didn't do? She didn't go and apply for a job at TSR working for Gary Gygax and then slowly over time poison Dungeons and Dragons with her own like problematizing language and saying, you know what, I should run. Like, this is the thing. They always, the left always does this thing, right? Where they're like, well, when the right did it, it was worse. No, sir, it was not. They never got into the company. They never tried to get in the top positions of power and then change it from the top down. They never did. The worst they did, like Jack Thompson, the guy who was like talking about, Mortal Kombat and Doom and whatnot. He never tried to take over those companies. He simply said, I don't think that some of this is appropriate for kids. And he got some pushback for it. And that's fine by me. That's fine. But what these people are doing is they're using a different language, and they're way more successful and they're way more destructive, because when Jack Thompson or like my mother or like some of these pearl clutching, what's the name of the Tipper Gore type, like those people that are like, oh my god, the language, oh my god, like that's the only thing they can do. We're gonna have labels put on the rap CDs that say, this is not appropriate for whatever, like the people under a certain age. That's the most they were able to do. You know what? It didn't do anything. The rap industry continued to go on and become massive. you know, and
that made it more desirable.
yeah, it did. It made it more desirable. But like they never like moved into the industry and took over. But these people did. Like they're eating these hobbies from the inside out with their crazy ideas. Yeah, go ahead.
Right. I mean, it's gotten so bad to what you're saying. Like they spun it off into this whole consultancy or consulting aspect.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like, you know, how does DEI get into everything and all this and that? It's because they have these cattle gate systems specifically set up that are funded by, you know, large think tank entities that are they themselves just a shell for UF or WF and UN initiatives, you know. And so like all this stuff is like I call it bot agency, capital B, capital O, UGH, capital T, because they're essentially turning people into robots, and where it's like you have to represent all of this and do the thing, and if you don't, then you're eliminated, and we'll get somebody else who will do it, you know. And so that created this thing where it got spun out of HR too. And so number one, they only hired people that they agreed with ideologically to begin with. And then as they got to like feeling that they wanted to have even more impact on the industry, especially when you talk about the game industry and why it's shifted and changed so much in the last 10, 15 years, it's because they astroturfed all these women into mid-level management positions because women don't, by and large, gravitate towards these jobs just because it's something that they don't want. But one of the articles that I put in the crib, I don't think we're gonna have time to get into, so I'll just kind of go over it in this, is the whole thing about like if we don't take the initiative to start hiring women, you know, in these positions and create positions for them, then there'll never be enough women in the industry to, you know, show the representational identity politics of women as gaming audience. And that's their big sell job, is that they can use like, well, there's 50% of the planet, over 50% of the planet is women. So why aren't there more than half of people in the game industry should be women too? Because that only makes sense, because everything has to be proportional to the population. Because, you know, people aren't allowed to just do things of their own volition and choice and discernment and actual skill, talent, and ability that they've gained and, you know, created over time. No, I just want to be able to say, well, I have a vagina, and I noticed that there was like 7 dudes in there. So we need to like, you know, fix these numbers. And so like my vagina means that I get to be in that room too. And not only do I get to be in that room, I also get to mark down everybody's work and tell them what they need to do to change it, to make it more appealing to me, because I lack the talent, skill, and ability, or the drive and the passion to do any of this shit myself. But I have all the traits of somebody who's just ready to like, you know, mind you into submission and make you a better person, whether you want to be or not.
Yep. Is it this NC Soft president article that you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that one is when I was reading it.
Yeah, no, it's a good point.
About, like DEI's not been given the appropriate chance to work, but we're going to keep doing it.
Oh, of course they're going to. They're putting it in the DNA of everything. You know, like shout out to CULT-ure.
Right.
VTubers unite. We're gonna save this thing. You watch. And CULT-ure covered Bridge, and I covered it on a stream a while ago as well. So like, yeah, they're just gonna keep trying to rebrand it. Like now they're trying to claim that like DEI is like you know, it's like a dog whistle for the N-word or whatever. No.
Yep.
No, it just means you're not, you didn't earn it. Safety and fairness.
And like safety and fairness is their new big thing. And safety and fairness is the cover label that they're using for top-down censorship.
Yeah.
Say like a game, Grand Theft Auto, about violence and drugs and all this kind of stuff. Well, you can't have a business in the game anymore that's named after drugs or anything like that, even though the whole point of what you're doing in the game is, you know, based around the concept of selling drugs. But to make references to that is against the safety and fairness of everyone. And so for the safety and fairness of everyone, we have to cut you off at the knees. I mean, it only makes sense. I mean, look at Jill over there. She's in a wheelchair. And I mean, we're going to have a foot race, but, you know, Jill's got a wheelchair, so you have to lose your feet. and she still gets to keep her wheelchair. But you know, like, and so like that's what we see is, you know, this whole idea of equity, and that's why I say equity is vengeance. It has nothing to do with like, you know, balancing the table. No, it's overtaking the table and like, you know, telling all the people that were there like you don't even get the scraps. You know, it's like it is really like the most insidiously vengeful kind of just, I don't know, like it is scornful and so full of so much penis envy. It is mind-boggling.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. So look, I just want to give a shout out. We got a lot of people watching. This is pretty good. Rumble is blowing the hell up, guys. Really appreciate it. So we got like a dozen people on our YouTube, and we got let me just look here because we're gonna have to end pretty soon. I'm sorry that we ended up chatting about other stuff. It's a massive win.
Nerd Wars right now.
Yeah, so we got like 30 people watching on Rumble, and we even got somebody on Twitch. So shout out to all of you all. I should put something on the screen. I don't know.
Thanks
Let's
so much.
do a little. Yeah, big respect for you guys. We hit like a milestone. That's pretty nice. So let me just switch it back here. And when does Nerd Wars start? It's pretty soon, huh? I want to like.
They've been in session for about half an hour, but it's all right. I mean, we're doing.
Oh.
Thing, you know?
Oh, okay. Well,
there's so many mods there. It's not like they can't do the show without me. You know, like I like to be there, but ultimately, you know, they can still, you know, we're doing it.
Yeah.
It's good.
I forgot. Yeah, thanks, Mr. 03, for the suggestion. I'm gonna put Rumble Chan on the screen. I did design a Rumble Chan for promoting Rumble. I don't know if Rumble needs. I think Rumble could use a waifu mascot, frankly. So there's no harm in that. So there you go. So thank you, Rumble, for providing all the. Look at this. There's still more people joining us on Rumble. What the hell, y'all? This is amazing. Thank you so much.
Dude, I think this means that I have to like really crank out the work on my problematic white guy Rumble channel now, because like it's just kind of been like the thing I've had sitting in the background. I was like, I'll get around to it, but I gotta get this YouTube channel working first. But you know,
there you go.
Rumble.
Yeah, dude. This is I also like to Rumble. I like to share this stuff with them. So let me give you guys a Javier Millier. And we're gonna get ready to wrap it up here. You better play some games now, Brian. Zarang says it's because Brian read the ad. Oh, I wonder, that might be why, because I read the ad for Rumble. But look, I'm happy to do it. They're willing to give me small opportunities to like grow the channel and maybe make a little money. Because like ultimately, what I'd like to do is work with my wife to maybe like move a little bit closer to home. We're looking at Hammond, Indiana right now. Possibly, no promises.
Nice.
I want to be closer to my brother and my mom because I know she's gonna need me. And my father's on his last legs, and I feel like being this far away is just not, it's not good. As a son, I should be closer to my dad, and that's one thing that I'm learning. Is the importance of where we come from and why that like prevents us from becoming embittered and isolated and atomized, which is what they want. So yeah, I'm all about that. So anyway, I'm sorry, John, we didn't get to a lot of the stories. We ended up talking about a bunch of other stuff.
Oh, dude, no, a lot of that stuff though. The great thing about the articles I bring is they're weird shit, and so weird shit, you can always get to weird shit.
We can. We'll definitely get to that because I do see some stuff here that I'm interested in going into. So let's try to do some more next week. I got to see what it's either going to be. What did we do last time? Tuesday? We did like Tuesday, and then we did.
Yeah, I'm really digging that Tuesday time. I think.
I think we can do the Tuesday
like,
again.
Top of the week.
Yeah, that works for me. I can do another Tuesday show. So we'll do another Tuesday show, and then we'll try to do at least two a week to start. So I think this is very successful. So thanks, guys, for coming on the stream. There will be game streams too, but I'm kind of want to get into a flow of doing this kind of stuff. So, and we will definitely talk more about that as the time goes on. And I might try something different. I might do, because I know that like our internet or the video capture here has been a little bit wonky. I'm curious if it'll work better in StreamYard. I've never used it, so maybe we'll try that next time. All right.
I had a hell of a time with StreamYard last night trying to run it through OBS. So, I'll do some. I think I need. I got it too ambitious, and so I'll scale back some of the stuff I've got going on in the background that nobody even sees happening right now. Like, there's literally like a digital fire happening in the frame of my video that nobody even sees, and it's listening to my voice to fire it.
Oh,
I'm making a video. But if,
if you're recording something,
I need to fix my rig. Is basically what it comes down to. I've got
All right, we'll do
resources at once.
It's a work in progress. We're just gonna keep refining things until we get it right. So, all right, and I probably
for a week.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you've only been cell shaded for a week. That's correct. Look, when I started off, my Vivian didn't do much of anything, and of course, people were like, "Dude, you're a man. Stop pretending to be a woman." I'm like, "Dude, I know I'm a man. That's not what this is about." Look, unfortunately, I can't get my wife to make this content.
White guy.
Yeah. If I could get my wife to do this instead, I think it'd be massively successful.
To kind of get your mind thinking.
For sure. Yeah.
So maybe that'll be the changes in due time. Like, Vivian will be a woman, and like we'll get more people in here. This can become more colloquial and fun. But
for sure. Yeah, definitely gonna try to get guests on. Thank you.
I appreciate everybody in the stream. If you still are interested after this, pop over to Nerd Wars with me, where I will be heading to mod. And they'll be there for like the next hour and a half. So you've got nothing else to do, and you want to hear more people that are kind of in this, space of, being mentally based and just kind of willing to deal with reality on these terms. Head over to Nerd Wars on YouTube. I don't think he's got a Rumble aspect just yet. But yeah, they're doing their Saturday Nerd Rage right now.
All right. Well, that sounds good. Thanks, guys, for coming on the stream today. Let me know what you guys think about what we talked about in the comments. Just covered a couple stories, but maybe got to something a little bit bigger. That's what I try to do, is look at what's happening and then give a bigger picture perspective on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So them changing the word race in D&D, for example, got not a lot to do with D&D. It's about changing the way that we perceive the uniqueness and the humanity in other people. So anyway, that's just one little thing, but let me know what you guys think about this in the comments. If you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications, leave us a comment, let us know what you guys think about what we discussed on the show today. And also, there's a link to the Discord. It is an up-to-date one. Until I figure out how to put an evergreen Discord link, I will be adding a new link every time I upload, or every time I go live. And hopefully I'll see you all in the Discord server. Thanks so much for coming on. Please share this video, and I will talk to you all in the next one. See you next time, guys.
Group shall prosper, especially the most oppressed group of all, gamers.
I want people in the industry to be a little bit louder about people being mean to other people, and maybe say it's not a good thing.
Yeah.
Maybe say we don't want you around if you're going to be a cunt.
Yeah.
And hateful. And that the games industry is diverse naturally. Not because anyone's making them be diverse. Because the world is diverse, you stupid motherfucker. Yeah! And if you have a problem with that, come fight me. Physically. Bitch.
Has anyone taken you up on that yet?
No, because they're all pussies.
Yep.
Down here, salt is a way of life.
Obviously, the environment down here is all salt. The ceiling's salt, the floor is salt, the walls are salt, and to an extent, the air is salt. And you breathe that in, and you can constantly taste the salt.